Okay, I'm pleased to introduce Laura Hamilton and Claudia Freeland Jolin. Lauren has been a key member of the Downtown Partnership for over a decade and is currently its Chief Marketing Officer. Her interests include economic development, brand strategy, and placemaking events. Lauren holds a BA in Public Relations from Hofstra University. Prior to her tenure at the Downtown Partnership, Lauren worked at the Bethesda Urban Partnership and the Arts and Humanities Council of Montgomery County. Claudia is currently the Vice President of Economic Development at Downtown Partnership. Prior to her tenure at Downtown Partnership, Claudia was the Special Assistant in Economic Development in the Baltimore Mayor's Office. She also has had stints with the Baltimore Development Corp and the State Department, working in the Office of East Asian and Pacific Affairs Public Relations Office. Claudia is also a veteran of the U.S. Navy, where she was assigned to work with the NSA on data interpretation. She is currently on the International Downtown Association's Research Committee and Project for Public Spaces Leadership Council and the Greater Baltimore Economic Development Committee. Claudia's educational background includes a master's in international policy from Georgetown, a bachelor's in economics from UMBC, and a BA in political science from the University of University of Manoa, Hawaii. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce our esteemed speakers who will talk about the BDC.
Right.
The Central Business District, excuse me.
CBD, as it's known. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be with you all today. I'm going to use Claudia's term. She is our in-house economist. Sometimes she refers to herself as the grumpy economist, but I think she just likes how that sounds. We're going to do a quick presentation about sort of who Downtown Partnership is, and then go over some of the numbers from our State of Downtown report that we just released about a week ago. And then we're going to open it up to a Q&A so that we can directly answer any questions you all may have about what's sort of happening in the Central Business District, the core of downtown, Charles Center, a neighborhood of many names. So I'm going to screen share and hope that this all goes smoothly. And feel free to chime in if you have a question as I'm going. I'm happy to be very flexible about that. Try not to read you everything on the screen, and you can see it for yourself. I like to start with visually setting the scene. So Downtown Partnership of Baltimore, our namesake organization, has been around since 1983. We're a B2B membership and advocacy organization. Our members consist of business leaders from all industries, really all over the city. They are sort of heavily located within that green circle, which is the 1 mile radius of downtown, but we have member companies that are invested in the success of the downtown area, really from all over the city and even in the counties. The Downtown Management Authority is our business improvement district or a benefits improvement district. And that is the fun little blue line it's a shape with no name. And it has been around since 1993. We receive a tax fee, the property owners pay us directly. It goes through the city, but we do a tax surcharge, and that helps us cover cleaning, safety, parks maintenance, programming, and marketing for what is 106 blocks of what we call the core of downtown. As you can see on this map, I made the joke about the CBD, a neighborhood of many names. The CBD is sort of an amalgamation of parts of the Bromo Arts District, Charles Center, and the Inner Harbor, but it is also known as sort of the core of downtown. These maps matter because I'm going to talk a little bit about numbers on the next few slides. And when we say downtown as a whole for numbers, so if I tell you downtown resident occupancy is X, when I say downtown, I'm talking about that green circle, that larger and catchment area. When I talk about the DMA, the Downtown Management Authority, or the core of downtown, that's that blue area. We have started to separate out our data. Downtown Partnership has been reviewing economic data for these areas for about 30 years now. And we have been using the 1 mile radius number for everything. We found that to be a little bit challenging because as we have seen some of the shifts of where businesses want to be and where residents want to be, we wanted to be able to drill our data down to what's happening within the Central Business District versus what's happening in other downtown neighborhoods. Here's how we rank amongst the top 25 largest metro areas. Again, this is the 1 mile radius. Baltimore, downtown Baltimore is number 12 in population, number 15 in average household income, 13 in households over 75,000, and 13th in employment. And despite the pandemic, this is exactly where we were last year and the year before. Our rankings have not changed. So we are in stride with some of our neighbors, being Miami just before us in population, Minneapolis just behind us. You've got Washington, D.C. as number 8 in population, and Portland, Oregon is number 15. We fall right there in between, and that's just good for us as we are trying to sell downtown to know where we land with some of our neighbors and competitors. A brief snapshot. Employment is up. So employment in 2020 was at 117,000. We know that had a lot to do with the pandemic. In 2021, we are back up to 125,000 employees, which does put us on par with where we were pre-pandemic. Our numbers in 2019, for example, with 124,000. So our employment has bounced back. I do want to give the small disclaimer here that this doesn't necessarily mean that 125,000 people are back in their offices physically in downtown. We're working on those numbers now, but it means that employers who are located here and who call the 1 mile radius home have gone back to hiring people versus laying off people, and that is a very good trend. The DMA area, the Central Business District, makes up just about half of the whole employment, so 60,000 employees in the core. Office space is doing okay. It has taken a small dip. It did rebound 3.5% though last year, which means we are recovering ahead of national average. And this is a snapshot. At some point, Claudia or I will put the link to the full State of Downtown report in the chat box for you. It's on our website now. The top industries remain healthcare, public admin, and professional services. I think if you're familiar with the Central Business District, you know that we have an awful lot of lawyers here. Gives them good access to the courthouse. Rents are down a little bit for Class A and Class B space. That does not surprise us, as we know that there is a lot of square footage to backfill and a lot of square footage that is currently available for lease. And Claudia, just jump in if I say anything wrong. She's the one who actually pulls these numbers. Housing is remaining steady and residents are going up. So the Central Business District is actually the fastest growing residential neighborhood in Baltimore City. We have new apartment conversions that have been happening. There was a sort of a boom of them, if you will, after 2011, where we saw a handful of conversions happen in the northern part of the Central Business District, but also in the Equitable Building and 10 Light in the southern part of the CBD. And that is continuing to grow and residents are coming. So we feel pretty good about this. Downtown Partnership released a housing demand study back in 2017. We do one every 5 years. Claudia and the economic development team are embarking on a new one. We want to see what we can learn about forecasting here. Can we forecast where this residential number is going to go? How much more housing? How many more conversions can we expect? I think everybody wants to know what we're going to do with all this vacant office space and all this vacant hotel space. The truth of it is, the answer may be continuing to diversify the mix of neighbors we have in this area and bringing in more residents. Apartment occupancy is strong. It's at 95%. In the DMA, it's a little down from that. It's 91%. We had several buildings come online last year, and when that happens, we usually see a dip. And so we had 410 lofts come online, which was affordable housing. Those tend to fill up as soon as they become available. The Redwood Campus Center, as you can see on the slide, used to be an office building, sat vacant for a handful of years. And Carrie Ewer and Metropolitan Partnership came in and redeveloped that building. It is stunning. It is eco-friendly, and it is conveniently located near the university. And so it's mostly student housing, but it is market rate. And they're filling up quite nicely. And then brand new on the market with Prosper on Fayette, which is another 181 market rate. And so when you see that many come on in 1 year, you're going to see the occupancy level go down, but we feel, and we're hearing good things from property managers, that things are strong. Hospitality, here's where you can tell I'm in marketing. I wrote prime for a comeback because we can all hope, as we know, downtown Baltimore really lives and thrives off of being a tourist destination, in addition to an office and employment center. Our hotel inventory took a real beating during COVID. We lost a handful of hotels. It might have been the right sizing that we need. I'm not an economist, so I'm just going to sort of speak generally here. We had a lot of hotels per square mile compared to some of our sister cities. And so we don't want to see any type of business sector fail. But we are fortunate to see that already the vacant hotels are being snatched up for residential conversions. And so at least there is positive momentum in the development world. Visitor spending is beginning to rebound. I won't dwell on this too much. We know that overnight visitors are coming back, day visitors are coming back, and international and national travel was still limited last year because of COVID. So really, we just need that pesky COVID to get out of town once and for all. Our retail sales are fine. I didn't put the comparable number here from where they were before, but they were higher. They've gone down about $200 million. We lost the gallery. It's no longer on the market. The owner of the gallery, Brookfield, is really re-envisioning that entire building. That's not in the data anymore, as it was sort of officially removed from the market for retail leasing. We do have some good retail news, though. We know that office requires retail, residential requires retail. We have some small retail that we're really proud of. The Downtown Partnership created a program called Boost. It is Black-owned and occupied storefront tenancy program. And we started this program in 2021. We gave $50,000 grants to 5 small Black-owned businesses to move into vacant storefronts in the downtown area. Of those 5, 1 opened before the end of the year. We have 1 opening on June 1st, and the other 3 are under construction. So we need to diversify the retail. We need to provide lunch options. We need to provide shopping options. We need to enliven the streetscape. And we know that we need to do that through retail. But the downtown retail properties are not all turnkey. And a lot of them have so much square footage that they're not actually ripe for small businesses to take advantage of. So it is an initiative of the Downtown Partnership to figure out how we can re-envision those storefronts for a future that gives us more diverse retail, diverse in sector, but also diverse in ownership. Despite a really tough year because of COVID, we saw a handful of new restaurants join the scene last year, which is great news. If you haven't been down to Werner's in a while, Werner's is reopened under a new operator. It's lovely. It's a great place for a breakfast meeting. And as I said before, vacancy at the gallery is not really included in our data anymore. We just felt like that needed to be said time and time again because it does change the numbers. The economic impact of downtown Baltimore is strong. We put this together every couple of years to remind the state, to remind the city, to remind all of our stakeholders the value that downtown provides to our entire region. So you can see here a quick snapshot that although downtown represents 4% of Baltimore's total geography, it generates 18% of all income tax, 15% of the city's property tax yield, 85% of hotel taxes, and 75% of parking taxes. And as we have been heavily lobbying the city and state for investment in the central business district, these numbers have really mattered quite a bit to us in helping to tell the story of the value that this area brings. And when this neighborhood doesn't see investment and it starts to fall apart, then you see the economic impact decrease, and that's not good for any of us. Like I said, we'll put the link in the chat box. Claudia, you might have already done that. Yes, you did. Thank you so much. And I'm going to stop sharing and we can have a little bit of a Q&A that can be as informal or as formal as everyone would like it to be. I just want to close this portion out by saying that we very much understand that the Central Business District has a lot of not so great things happening right now, but there is a lot of positive momentum. And I don't want to be overly Pollyanna about it, but I do want to share that we recently worked with the state to get $10 million in the capital budget this year and $1.5 million to help us with safety. So we have $11.5 million in FY23 to directly invest into the Central Business District. And then we have an agreement or a promise of 10 million in FY24 and another 10 million in FY25. And we, along with our board and a group of stakeholders, and really everyone, we want everyone's opinion, are looking to figure out now how we can leverage those funds, right? We know there's federal infrastructure funds coming into the city through DOT. We know that we are a city of well-meaning philanthropic organizations, and we are a city that has really wonderful corporate partners. So how do we take that state money? How do we leverage it? How do we immediately start to work on some things that have been overlooked or under-maintained for a really long time? And then also, how do we make this area sexy again? And so we know the conversations that happened in the room. T. Rowe Price is going to Harbor East. Bank of America is going to Harbor Point. Bank of America is going to Harbor East. People are leaving the CBD. I don't have the perfect answer for that, but I will tell you this. We know that downtowns shift and downtowns grow. And in this case, they left one downtown neighborhood to go to another downtown neighborhood. And that hurts when you are the organization that maintains the central business district. But it also is good for us in that they stayed in the city and they stayed in downtown. And we have to be better champions of all of our downtown neighborhoods and help make those connections from neighborhood to neighborhood so that we can all thrive. The CBD is the core. It is the center. It is the heartbeat. And it desperately needs that. It needs that state money, and it needs all of us to buy in and take care of the sidewalks and increase the lighting and make it a place where people want to work and live. But it also needs safety, right? So the elephant in the room is always safety. It's not been great. We're under policed on foot, we're under policed on car, and we're under lit. There's a lot of things I think that we can all sort of look at and say, this is a problem and we need to fix. I know that I can tell you Downtown Partnership is fully committed to finding solutions to some of those things, but also really impressing upon the city to take on what they should be taking on by way of safety and security. And then we supplement. So we got $1.5 million, as I said, from the state this year for safety services. We have several private deployments of Maryland State Police officers and Baltimore City School Police officers that are in our neighborhoods 7 days a week. And we also hire several private safety companies, Global Public Security, Wolf Security, et cetera, to also be on detail in the downtown area. And we are committed to doing whatever we can to make people feel safe being in downtown, because that is number one. You can build all the beautiful things here, but people have to feel safe being here. So we're very understanding of that. I will get off my soapbox now. I see the chat box is sort of on fire, so I can start there, or folks can, I don't know how you all normally moderate these, but you let me know.
Why don't you go ahead and start with the chat?
Absolutely. Oh, okay. So Nikita, for bigger downtown retail spaces, has there been a consideration of co-working or maker spaces? Absolutely. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the success that Spark has had at Power Plant Live, but Spark started very small, and they, within their first 2 years, had to expand and take up more space inside of Power Plant. And then Fearless, who was there, really just exploded with excitement and had to hire 100 people. So they expanded again, and Spark is now under their third or fourth expansion, and they're also taking up a piece of Power Plant on the other side of Pratt Street. And so we see that these maker spaces and these working spaces and these tech startup spaces do have real opportunity to backfill. I don't know if anybody has any great ideas, but I know we've been talking to the folks at Upsurge about how incredibly interesting it would be to see an Upsurge office in downtown, and similar to Spark, give them the space to thrive and bring in people who we'd love to see be the next iteration of our downtown neighbors. And maybe that's an opportunity to re-envision the building that T. Rowe Price is going to vacate in 2024, right? So our vacancy numbers only show what we have now. They're not projected vacancy for 2 years out. And we know some folks are leaving. And so there are a lot of conversations right now with the state funds, but also just with other organizations who should be here and where can they go.
And if I could add on to that, because I did comment on yours, Nikita. For those of you who are brokers or have broker friends, I would love more of these smaller contracts to be signed, or somebody to take on if you have larger square footage space, to think more differently about not keeping or getting a new M&T or a Fortune 500. Baltimore really is the city of smaller businesses, but we all know that when you sign a 10,000 square foot lease, you get $5 compared to 100,000 square foot lease. And that is the biggest hurdle for these smaller types of maker spaces, is somebody has to take over that entire space and then sell smaller spaces over and over again. And in the brokerage community downtown, that is not where a lot of the focus goes.
Yeah, we're definitely starting to think pie in the sky. You know, do we need to have a CDC that oversees subleasing in downtown to make things like this more accessible? What can we do to lean on the private property owners to make these things a little bit more accessible? Those conversations are happening, but I want to impress upon you all that we are by no means capable of solving all of these things in a vacuum. And so I think when Michael asked if we would speak today, I was like, oh my God, fantastic. This is an opportunity to talk to 20 people who are so much smarter than me and might have good ideas. So I'm going to put my email in the chat box, but even if there are ideas you want to give us today, or if you would follow up with us, we know we can't do this alone, because you guys have some really good questions. So I'm going to jump on to David's question: what can be done about the former mechanic site, which is just outside of my office? I got to live next to that demolition very loudly every day for a year and a half, and then look at the hole every day since then, and it breaks my heart. We are trying to work with the city and the state now on what can be done about that location. It's really unacceptable to have holes in the ground. We recently pulled the economic impact numbers to the city and the state that we're missing out on by not having development happen at that hole, but also the hole on Calvert Street and the hole at 325 West Baltimore. And so I don't think those are numbers we're sharing publicly just yet, but I say that to this group to let you know that we are not letting it go, and that we are trying to actively find ways to get anyone who will listen to help us figure out what can be done about it now, but then also working with our state legislatures to figure out how we can do what they've been doing in other cities. In other cities, if you left that development there for this long, there would be an incremental tax fine on you, right? And every year you would be paying to leave that space vacant. And so to Claudia's credit, for the last 2 years, she has been screaming at anyone who will listen about how Maryland needs to adopt this and how this could really drastically help Baltimore City, but also, you know, other areas in Maryland that struggle with this. And so we are working. Go ahead, Claudia.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you brought this question up. I wasn't being joking at all when I said this is my favorite question. A follow-up to this is because we are actively working on changing the current status of that. As a powerful group here, because you asked, I'm going to come at you with a request of support when we do get to, because this is a very political situation, as those of you are very aware. Those who are willing to choose sides, we are going to ask that you do within the near future, is where I'll leave it there.
Yeah, we need help. You know, it was interesting. One of the things that was recently said to Claudia and I on a conversation and with the city was, not enough people have complained about that space. And so it's made it politically hard for us to do anything about it. And that's interesting to me. I guess I'm just green enough to believe them, but also I'm green enough to hear their suggestion loud and clear and start to make some noise. So we'll see what we can do about making some noise together and see if we can't see some improvements. You know, the bottom line is that they're hurting everybody's wallets by leaving those spaces vacant. And we've been talking about the negative, but I want to flip it to a positive. We did see, after 20 years of vacancy, the F&D building at 300 on the 200 block of North Charles Street just sold and is being redeveloped as residential. And then on the ground floor, they will have retail and a restaurant. We think that's great news. You know, it's sort of Baltimore's own version of land banking. We have it here. It's really been detrimental to the central business district. And we've got to continue to find ways to push through and sell off these spaces or start building on these spaces to benefit the entire city. Stuart asked a little bit about hospitality. I'm with you. I'd love to see Visit Baltimore open the visitor center 7 days a week. It sounds like they are trying to hire and staff up, and that's been a real struggle for them. They are also going to rebrand and re-envision how they use the visitor center moving forward. My understanding is they are trying to get retail in there as well a couple days a week, even if it's small business pop-ups, to try to better activate the space. Some of the feedback they've gotten from how folks use the visitor center was sort of lackluster. So they are hoping to staff up and get it open more frequently. Joseph, when can we expect to see the Superblock move forward? That is my favorite question. Jason Williams and the team at Mason-Dixon and the whole Compass project are working really hard. They seem very close. We have helped tour a bunch of their financial supporters through the downtown and have been really committed to seeing this through with them. This summer, Claudia's team is working on a state grant with them to sort of be hopefully what is the last piece of their financing puzzle. So we're hopeful that they will start to break ground maybe within the year.
They are phasing that project with housing first, then retail, then hospitality, depending on the market. The hospitality one is a big question mark, and then the entertainment. So I believe it's coming in 4 phases, and we are helping them with a Project Core grant, which, as Lauren said, will be the final portion of the start of that project. Hopefully, if we all cross our fingers, the ready to go visit and have a great time is 2026.
Which would just be incredible to connect Lexington Market and everything that's positively happening over at the university to the central business district and connect the residents to all of that incredible retail and really even our visitors. The feedback that Visit Baltimore gets from visitors and that we get from residents is that, you know, we have a lot of assets and our assets are great, but they're not well connected. They're not well connected through good, like strong streetscapes and safe streets. They're not well connected through lighting. And they're not well connected because there's just like full gaps of missing retail or vacant blocks. And so we need to chip away at those connections so that all of the assets can thrive together. Can you describe the proposed TIF for downtown? I can a little bit, and I can also add in the link to the ULI presentation. So a ULI panel of experts came to meet with us and did a SWOT analysis and talked to 20 to 30 stakeholders this winter. The TIF idea is their idea, although I don't want to forget the Downtown Partnership did put forth a TIF idea back in 2010, 2011, although it was a much smaller area than what the folks at the ULI were recommending. And this was just their individual recommendation. Steve Leeper from Cincinnati came and saw the neighborhoods that were thriving and the neighborhoods that needed help and had this idea that is similar to what they used in Cincinnati and over the Rhine, a neighborhood that was really in need of redevelopment, and had this crazy idea of doing a larger encatchment area for the TIF, excluding Harbor Point, it's already under a TIF, but sort of capturing Harbor East, Little Italy, Historic Jonestown, Charles Center, Broma Arts District, and like even down into the stadiums. And the idea would be to use those funds for development also within that larger encatchment area. And so then it's not really all just coming into the central business district. You could sort of help some of the neighborhoods that really lead into downtown, some of our gateways, by expanding those boundaries. We could also leverage private funds through a private investment fund, and that money could be used based off of sort of the mayor and the Downtown Partnership and the community's input to make sure that we are focusing on an equitable development solution for the larger downtown and the larger city as a whole. So I don't have a ton of those answers because it was really a ULI recommendation. I think Melody from the BBJ called it the super TIF. That's kind of fun. Maybe we all wear super capes and we create a super TIF. It was just a suggestion at this point, and that's part of the process we're going through now, is figuring out what are all the tools in our toolbox as we look at the future of the Central Business District.
And I'll add on to that. If you track the city's CIP funding for the entire city, in the past 5 years, only about $400,000 has been in the CBD. So the TIF would be specifically to any of you who drive through downtown and go on the Charles Street Wave with us. It'd be those type of projects that we would be fixing, the broken sidewalks. If you have done any projects under Pratt Street, you know there's absolutely no electricity under there and that all of our water pipes are failing. So the TIF money would all go to those infrastructure projects that the CIP funding has been giving in other places that are very much needed as well. So that is where the majority of those funds would go.
Yeah, I think the message from our board from when I first started back in 2011 was where there is new investment is private investment is also where there is new city investment. And so what does that mean for the downtown core? that isn't really seeing a ton of ground up builds, right? How do we improve the infrastructure underneath the street? How do we stop having curb cuts every 2 days and traffic jams because of them? And how do we get better streetlights and all of those things? And honestly, it's been 11 years and none of that's really been answered. And so the TIF idea was a way to encourage that type of investment. Let's see. Claudia, I'm going to let you take Patrick's question.
Yep, I'll do it really quick. So we put out a housing study every 5 years, as Lauren said at the beginning. It's an outlook study that goes over every point of this. So I'll go very quickly. Yes, we do surveys for multi-family construction and conversions. We know exactly where they come from and where they go to. In our study, we do, the appendix shows almost by percentage and by person, where they're coming from, where they're going to. The average person in the downtown area lives in Baltimore downtown for 6 years. Are they those who work at T. Rowe Price? A lot of them are doctors. The ones on the west side, they go to the hospital. So you hit that nail right on the head. Exactly. Are they working 100% remotely? Question mark. We are figuring that out right now. The data is trickling very slowly, a little too slowly for my comfort. We are working on that. We are assuming that they are around 65 to 70% remote if they are able to do so. That is our assumption according to the retailers and what they're getting in their lunchtime sales. Lastly, are they property tenants retaining or chasing rents? The turnover there is usually people who decide that they want to live with another human and make children with them, so they leave. That is the turnover of the 6 years. We're done with my stage in life of working at entry-level T. Rowe Price, M&T Bank. I'm done with my doctorate. Want to have a baby. They do not have children downtown. 100% basically do not have children downtown. So that is the turnover. We would say majority of those who leave us in the downtown area.
Funny enough, though, we have a lot of dogs. We did a impromptu dog survey back in 2017 and found that we had almost as many dogs as we did residents. So something for us to think about as we re-envision downtown and make it a place where residents want to be, in addition to a place where employees want to be, is what do they need to be happy here? What do they need to keep them here? We do see some folks in downtown with strollers. We don't have any parks for them, for their kids to play in, really. They got to go down into Federal Hill. And if you live in Mount Vernon, that can be kind of a hike. So we see a lot of kids play up in Mount Vernon in the West Park, which is lovely. And we see dog walkers everywhere. We've got to find a way to invest in things that are going to keep those people here. And we're behind on other cities in that area. And Downtown Partnerships Board went through a strategic planning process in the last year. And the biggest question was, what is our role in economic development? Right. So for years, we've had an economic development team that pulls all of this data. And we do have a small capital projects team, and we have taken on some capital projects, but what should our role be in economic development? What, as it pertains to what BDC's role is in economic development and what the city's supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. I'll tell you, just from my standpoint, being in the world of business improvement districts for now 21 years, I do think it is the Downtown Partnerships role to be more of not only a catalyst for change and investment, but to be a developer ourselves in that investment. When we see the change that happened in Cincinnati and the changes that happened in Philly and the things that happened in Pittsburgh, a lot of that came from those business improvement districts. And so I'm not afraid to say that I very much think that is our role. Thank you, Nikita, for the recommendation. I've also read the Black Butterfly and second your recommendation that everyone should read that book for sure. Any other questions? I think we sort of blew through those. We want to be respectful of time. I think also Claudia and I are both used to talking fast, but please, I think Kim has her hand up.
Yes, hello, this is Kimberly Min. Nice to see you. I guess I want to pick up on exactly the point that you just said, because when you were speaking about being a downtown CBD and how you better interact or create the flow to other neighborhoods, when you're talking about young adults and families, I think you can take a more expansive but parallel view that way, where you don't necessarily believe that you can keep them downtown. I think the objective is to keep them downtown longer with those very things that you say. And there's been a lot of strength and movement in some of the schools. But then I think there is an ambassadorship to other Baltimore City neighborhoods that are incredibly livable. I lived in Mount Vernon, left when I had my second child because we just weren't going to, well, actually it was my fourth child, so we just weren't going to fit. But I did the work with the city, who was incredibly solicitous in the Mount Vernon Children's Park, and did all the work for that legally, vis-a-vis the city. So I do think that there's an open-mindedness to that, but I would say 100% the open green space for families is probably one of the number one items in sort of creating a space for our children to run. I joke with some of my friends who leave downtown to go to like the suburbs where they have to mow the grass and take care of a yard, that if there were just enough parks, you wouldn't have to take that on, which, by the way, is just a pretty difficult thing to do. Does that make sense? Like, enhance that ambassadorship to stay in the city, I think is, and you, if they're starting out down there, then you've got a captive audience.
Absolutely.
That's just my point.
It's a great point, and not lost on us at all. I think that the partnership we have with Live Baltimore is good, but I think it can be stronger. We know that downtown residents by nature are transient. That's not just a Baltimore trend, that's a universal trend. And so how do we take those downtown residents who we know are not going to stay forever and get them to fall in love with the city while they're here and then stay in the city, right? It's not lost on us that while downtown's residential population is growing, Baltimore City's population is declining. And we need to all be worried about that. And so however we get them to fall in love with us here and then stick around, if they live in downtown for 6 years and then they move to Bolton Hill and they move to, South Baltimore, I don't care where you move, just stay in the city, for goodness sake.
Right.
And then you know what? We make downtown so good that the apartment just rents itself again. And in many ways that's happening, thankfully, because we have the university, which is such an incredible anchor, and Hopkins. Most of the residents who live at 520 Park Avenue, which came online about 5 years ago, actually are here because of Hopkins, because that's a really easy east cutover for them versus some of the other places that they could live. Understanding why they live here and making sure that those things remain attractive to them while also creating a pipeline for the city as a whole is a big one for me.
I have a question. Given that office vacancy levels are probably permanently negatively impacted by the pandemic, and given that the CBD is going to have to backfill that with residential, retail, arts, and a variety of non-office uses, is there any consideration being given to a special incentive to developers to develop residential or retail in the CBD, perhaps with some of this stimulus money that you guys are getting, 11.5 million?
Yeah, so the 11.5 million from the state has to be used in very specific ways, and capital and safety. We also put in for an ARPA request, and our ARPA request is specifically around, for us, mostly retail. It's a really interesting question, and I think it's one that for the most part, when we bring up, we still see some roadblocks. We have talked a little bit about, development incentives as a whole for downtown. So, whether it's new market tax credits or other development incentives that can be created, we know that a task force has been kicked around from the mayor's office, and that the right people need to start having those conversations. So getting folks like David Bramble and the mayor's deputy mayor Ted Carter and all of those folks in the room to talk about what those incentives can be.
Lauren,
Claudia, do you want to add to that? It's more your world than mine.
Sure. The largest portion that we have been talking about across the nation is there's a consultant going on the federal level to push a conversion tax credit on the federal level. And I think once that happens, which we believe it will, since it has support we will take that success and pull it down into the local level, mirroring the tax credit for the residential conversions for market rate. We want to see how that plays out a little bit more in the conversion tax credit. I pushed really hard to do a tax credit on going from B to A office as well. That didn't go through. So right now we're just doing conversion tax credit and then to see how the market really reflects after COVID. We really want to see the numbers. People are downsizing or moving. They're either moving to class A or what we're calling A++. I don't know, water. If you have 14 nice chairs, I don't know, you know, those kind of office, or you're just staying at home. As you can see, that is what I'm doing. So when those numbers are reflected in COVID and see where companies want to put their money when it comes to physical space, I want to reflect that in the local tax credits, given that Baltimore City doesn't have a lot of money to give away. So that's where we're trying to be really thoughtful about it.
Can you talk about how much of the state workforce might be moving to downtown?
Yeah, we can. So, you know, they've eyeballed it at around 3,000 employees, which is great. What we have found is some of those 3,000 employees are actually already here. And so that 3,000 number may or may not be accurate. For example, the announcement that came just at the end of last week about the first state center office being announced, they're actually moving from Saratoga Street to North Charles Street. And so they're staying in the CBD. There's no net gain from the first office that was announced, which is a little bit of a bummer because it takes the sort of fun PR side out of it. But it is good because, you know, they're filling an office that did have incredible vacancy, that was a privately owned office, and they're coming from a state-owned building. The question now that we have for DGS is, what are you going to do with that building? Do you have plans for redevelopment? Are you going to put it on the market? And so don't have any great answers there. I can just promise you that Claudia is a hawk and she is all over it and making sure that they provide us some answers. They know that we're watching. We really want to see them announce some sort of redevelopment plan for that building on Saratoga, so we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. That was not our hope here as it related to getting these office workers downtown. That said, there's still about 2,000 office workers that are going to be coming into downtown in the next 2 to 3 years. That will be a net. And, you know, when you look at where our numbers are now, I think I shared they were about 125,000, which is higher than where we were in 2019. You add 2,500 to that, we're up to about 127,500. And that is the highest we've had definitely during my tenure here, but maybe ever. So we need to do a little more work on that, breaking it down as CBD versus all of the downtown. But we did work with the state to make sure that the majority of the boundaries for offices in the RFP fell within the central business district boundaries, so that there was a direct correlation and that we would see the positive gains. Now we have to build a downtown that those workers want to be in. That's the challenge. I mean, to be very blunt, some of the state employees are concerned about safety. They're concerned about whether or not this means they're going to have to pay for parking. Where are they going to get lunch? They don't get a super long lunch hour. You know, can the state be flexible and provide them a longer lunch hour so they can actually go to the local deli or go to Kona Grill or and put their money back into the economy? Some of those things still have to be figured out. Is a really great idea. I think the execution is ultimately going to be very helpful. And it's going to backfill, but it's not going to be our saving grace. We know that we're still going to lose T. Rowe Price in 2024. And that is an incredible gap to fill. And we're all hearing the rumblings of whether or not Pandora is ever going to come back to 250 West Pratt. And that's an incredible gap to fill. The nice thing is they're both really great buildings with really great owners who seem to be willing to be creative. So they may need to break up their parcels into smaller spaces. Brad Burns has been really successful with the redevelopment of the Vickers Exchange building, breaking that up into smaller parcels. And he has 25 smaller leases rather than 2 really large leases, which provides him sustainability over time. He's not going to lose all 25 of those leases in one day. So it's just sort of remodeling and resetting expectations. And then to Nikita's point, trying to find some cool new reuses of the space. So whether it's more Sparks or more art space, or what can it be? What is the future? We don't necessarily have all those answers. Luckily, the data is very helpful. But we do have a survey right now. I put a link in the chat box to a page on our website called The Future of the CBD. On my last plug of the day, you could take the survey that's on that page. It would be super helpful to us. We want to get people's ideas of where the money should be spent, little help ranking projects, and having that from a group such as this would be very helpful.
Any further questions? Okay, if not,
Nate, I want
Go
to put
ahead.
in a plug for membership here.
yep. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. Very good presentation, incidentally. I enjoyed it a lot. So I want to put in a plug for membership. LAI, for our members, we'd like you to bring non-members in. We're looking for diverse new members, and we're doing a fall and a winter membership drive. So please bring people in. And as Nate mentioned, we are even trying to comp lunch for people who would be likely candidates. So, and for non-members, like our speakers today, if you're interested, we'd be very glad to have you think about joining, and we can send you information. My email address is dbenn@quinnevans.com, but you can contact any of the membership committee folks. Rachel is sitting in the middle of my screen right now. Marianne Henderson was supposed to be here, but had COVID, and Matt I haven't seen, but also board members. But it's very easy to send out information, and we like to have a really interesting group like this to get the speakers in and to pick their brains and have them pick our brains. So please think about that. For non-members, there's these weekend retreats that Nate mentioned, and there's also connections to all the LAI chapters presentations as well. So you get quite a network. So part of it is this, but part of it is meeting in person again very soon, we hope, and making connections and friends. So I'll stop there and wish you all bring in some more members, please.
Yeah, again, thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Claudia. Very interesting and cogent presentation. I want to remind everyone that on June 15th is our next event with the people from New Ecology talking about zero energy construction. That's on June 15th. We're not sure yet whether it'll be in person or just on Zoom, but we'll let you know. And if anyone has any further thoughts of what sharing what members are up to, let me know so we can highlight that at upcoming events. With that, thank you, everyone, and hope to see you next month.
Good to see everybody.
See you all. Thank you again.
Excuse me, can you please tell me who you are? 173799. Hello? Hello? So hold on. There. Hello? Hello? Is anyone there?